That's part of it. Gotta do it.
All right. Hey, it's Jesse. Welcome to the mission statement. I'm here with Dillon Moorman, and he's a really interesting guy. We've been talking for, 2 hours now, just about everything and anything that he does. And it's really good to have him with us on our YouTube, and we're going to talk about him and not me. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Dillon Moorman with Moorman Taxidermy, Game Recovery. I don't know really about myself. Just grew up hunting and learned from parents and grandparents, and really was fortunate enough when I was a teenager to grow up on a piece of land and really just be able to get lost, really just figure stuff out. So
Absolutely. So where were you born? Where were you raised at?
I was born in Ohio, like Midwest Ohio. I don't know, town doesn't really matter, but
Yep.
then young age moved to Texas, Belton, moved around Copper's Cove, and then I actually grew up in Florence. Now I'm in Killeen area, so doing the living life.
Absolutely. So we're in the Fort Hood, Killeen area, and you're out of Florence, right?
I actually live here in Killeen.
Okay.
Actually, about 12 minutes from
But you work in Florence.
work in Liberty Hill.
Liberty Hill, okay. So we're in the Central Texas area, and he's real familiar with this area and hunting, and he's been here for a long time. So again, it's real good to have him here. And we're going to talk about your hunting background, because obviously you love to deer hunt, and he told me he likes to hunt a lot of other stuff, but primarily deer hunting. So tell us about how you got started hunting and then what you do nowadays.
Started hunting. My first memory of hunting.
Yeah.
I remember being a kid. I don't even know, probably 4, 3. I was small, like carried into the woods, set down
Sure.
in Ohio with my dad, my grandpas, and my uncle. They bow hunt, and then in Ohio they have shotgun and muzzleloader. They don't really have rifle season, and then during shotgun season they would drive, and the areas farm country with small blocks of woods, and they would drive deer. So they would, position everybody around and then push deer.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being little, my dad would give me a BB gun and set me next to a tree and tell me don't move. And I'm like, all right. And I would sit there, looking back as a parent now, I'm like, man, was that the best idea, leaving a 3-4-year-old kid in the woods with a BB gun? But I knew better.
And this is during the day, right?
During the day,
yeah.
yeah. I didn't know any better. I knew better than to just be shooting all willy-nilly, but I remember being a kid sitting next to that tree, and I could hear people coming, pushing deer. And every once in a while, a deer would run by, and he'd go by me, but then out into the field. Well, there it's small blocks and giant farmland. So when the deer got to the edge, they had to stop and think about, am I going to run the 1,000, 2,000 yards across this field to the next block of woods? Or am I going to try to come back around? And they had people positioned according so they could shoot.
Yeah.
And then from there, just did that. And then whenever I moved to Texas, the family I had didn't really hunt. But like I said, I grew up on a decent piece of land. My dad was a ranch manager.
Okay.
So we just kind of just go get lost.
So did your dad, was he like your hunting mentor? Is he the one responsible for today?
Early on, I would say, that started my want to.
Yeah.
And then later in life, to be honest, man, I've learned so much on my own or reading, which it sounds weird to read about hunting, but there's a lot of stuff out there now that you can figure stuff out. Or, I grew up watching. I lived on the Outdoor Network and everything, just watching. And then really it was trial and error. I started hunting here with a rifle and then got to where I was 8th grade maybe. So whatever age, 14, 15-ish.
Okay.
And decided a rifle in Texas, which sitting at a blind and whatever, it got to where shot the same rifle for many years. And
what kind of rifle was that?
243.
243.
I got to where I
too.
shot that all the time, and I knew what it was going to do.
Yeah.
And I was in 8th grade, and I remember going to my grandparents, which my grandparents on my mom's side, they don't hunt. And I told my grandpa is one of the reasons why I'm the type of person I am today. He taught me quite a bit, but I went to him and I said, Grandpa, I want a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
And he was like, for what? And I was like, for hunting.
Yeah.
And he was like, all right. So he took me to Marble Falls. There used to be an old store there that was a hunting store, big store. I went in there, found the bow I liked, and my grandpa was
Was
like,
this a compound or was it?
Compound.
Yeah.
and I was like, okay. And then I got it, practiced, First starting to shoot a bow, I was lucky if I was hitting a target. I couldn't figure it. I didn't have anybody to show me to bow hunt. I didn't know anybody that bow hunted.
Yes.
Eventually, just read, figured stuff out, figured it out to where now I was hitting the target, and then I got to where I was hitting where I wanted to.
Okay.
And then I remember I hunted for 3 years with nothing but that bow, and I finally shot my first buck. I was probably a sophomore-ish.
Oh, so
in
you're
high
like,
school.
what, 15, 16?
Yeah.
Wow.
Shot my first deer with a bow.
Okay.
I had to figure out. Well, I knew the property. The good thing is I'd lived on 700 acres, and like I said, just get lost all the time.
Yeah.
So I knew where the deer wanted to be. I knew just from
That's cool.
liking hunting and all that. I knew where I wanted to be, knew where everything was, and I figured it out, right? About the deer anyway.
Were you in a blind?
I was in a tree stand.
A tree stand, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And a whole
Ladder stand, like it, or
Sure. It was
or was it like a fort?
It was a pallet
Yeah.
that I found an old ladder.
Okay.
Well, I say a ladder. It was like this metal thing that looked like a ladder, and I welded a couple pieces of it together
Okay.
and strapped it to a tree and hoisted myself up a pallet into this tree that had this perfect L shape for a pallet to be in, put 2x4s.
How high was this? 15?
I was probably 15, 20 feet up there. I was daredevil as a kid. I didn't have much.
No harness though, of course.
Yeah, no. And then got up there and was like, this is where I want to be. This is where the deer are at.
Yeah.
I hunted for so long, I would either get seen or winded or something. And then finally, I remember, like it was yesterday, I had these 3 does that come in right here next to me. And I could see these bucks off in the distance, but they were all through the woods. I could just see them moving back there. And I was like,
Sure.
man. And then does went right over there to them. And I was like, dang, I ain't going to see them now. They got the does with them. Well, about the time I could hear running back and forth, and I could see them running, I was like, oh, I got shot. And that doe come running right down the trail. It was like 12 yards from me. That doe ran right down that trail, and I was like, this is about to happen. And I seen that buck coming right down that trail right here, and I stopped him.
Yeah.
Just stuck him. He made it probably 50 yards at max.
Wow.
Fell over. I was like, oh my God, that happened. And then ever since then, I don't really hunt with a rifle now. I bow hunt all year long.
What kind of bow do you have now?
I shoot PSE.
PSE. Okay.
I like it. It's a little bit older PSE, but it's 2-3 years old, but it fits. I like it. It shoots good.
Yeah. My prime is the same way. That's a prime mine. I bought that thing like
Been wanting to buy a new
2014.
bow, but
yeah.
I shoot the one well. I don't really need
Yeah,
2 bows. I'm
I'm
a
the
pretty
same.
practical guy. I think about stuff before I do it. I don't try to buy a bunch of stuff. I try to buy what I need
So you're strictly a bow hunter.
for
Okay.
deer.
And we were talking about saddle hunting earlier, and you don't saddle hunt.
No.
Okay. But you do have a lock on,
I've
and you
hunted
have
from
sticks, right?
Yep, I hunt with sticks. I have lock on. I've hunted public. I've hunted private. I've hunted walking in, hanging hunt, type hunting.
Sure.
All of it.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. What about, is there like a favorite hunt that sticks out in your mind that you just, whenever you're out in the woods, you're like, man, that was a great hunt?
So,
Minus one when we were 15.
I love deer hunting.
Yeah.
But my true ultimate passion, well, this kind of new thing is about 6 years or so.
Okay.
One, because the dog thing started.
Right.
finding game, and two, I you know, with that, I love coyote hunting.
Oh, predator hunter, huh?
That's
okay.
That's my true. I've always done it as a kid. Never really knew what I was doing, just doing it, you know. And then now that I'm older, I figured it out. Well, I say I figured it out. I mean, I don't think anybody's actually figured out predator hunting. You're out there hunting something that hunts for a living, so
Right.
you gotta
Be smart, yeah.
or outsmart them. And no matter what, a coyote's always gonna outsmart you every time.
Interesting.
But my favorite hunt was probably, it's a recent one, man. Last year, I've been doing some contests with my kids. I've been getting my daughter loves it, the predator hunting. And her and my nephew, they love it. I took them on their first contest last year. And it's the contest here, 24 hours. You start at noon, you be at the place to check in by noon. Like that's all the time you get. Turn them in, which, whatever. And I remember my favorite one was their first time doing a contest with me, and we were going. What we needed was, you know, a stringer, which is one of each animal we were looking for, and then they have other stuff on the side. But
okay.
I remember going, and we were at a place, and it's open cattle type country, small blocks of wood, and you got to play the wind, right? With coyotes, just like deer and anything else, you got to be careful going in. And I remember we called this one set. We were like 4 minutes in, and we had 2 coyotes come running out, and we shot one of them. The other one stayed back far. I don't know if he was educated or what he was, but he stayed out there like 600-700 yards away. But the other one come up like 80 yards. My daughter shot it. She was excited. And then our next stand after that, we moved probably a quarter of a mile and set up on the field. And I remember we were calling, we got in this field, and it was a cattle place. And we got there and started calling, and all these cows, I'm talking 50 or more, coming. They're within a 20-yard circle around us. And we're sitting on the ground during the daylight.
Hate cows.
We can't see.
Yeah.
I mean, we got cows in front of us, and we're like, what the heck? So we just keep playing it. Finally, after about 5 minutes, I was like, you know what? I'm going to stand up and see if I can see anything.
Sure.
And I was thinking, well, we just seen these last coyotes pretty quick. Maybe there was already one that ran by, something. So we ran out the set. We called for there for like 16, 17 minutes. And I was like, you know what? Let's hit this one last. It was pup distress sound. It's a little late in the year, but we'll give it a shot, see what happens. And I hit the button. We let it run for another like 4 or 5 minutes. And I was like, no, we ain't going to see nothing. These cows, whatever it may be. Maybe a bad stand, maybe.
Yeah.
And then about that time, I picked up my chair, and I went to look just one last time across this field, and there was this coyote out there about 220 yards. And I was like, oh, look at that.
Yeah.
And I remember we moved to get around the cows, and we shot this coyote from like 220 yards. And this coyote was the biggest coyote I've ever seen in my life. And it was raining, and we're across this big old muddy field, and we shot him, and we went up there and got him. We picked him up, and he ended up being 51 pounds. Just
Dang.
a giant
Yeah,
coyote.
that's big.
And what makes it my favorite is my nephew's with me. He's 16. He's a little bit bigger boy. He plays football. He works out all the time.
He put that thing over his shoulder, huh?
No. I did. Because I had to prove myself, right? I had to go 400 yards across this soft and muddy field to get out to the road to make it easier to get to it. And I remember I picked this coyote up, and it's only a 50-pound coyote. We only got to go 400 yards straight across a wild
But it's
field.
awkward
Pretty
way.
easy. I remember putting it over my shoulder, and I was like, all right, let's go. And I just headstrong just went. My goal was get to the fence, get to the road. We'll walk back to the truck and the truck.
Yeah.
Well, we got to the fence, and I'm not in the same shape I was, a few years ago. I got to the fence. I would remember telling me, I'm gonna puke, I'm gonna throw up. And
when was this? What time
this
of
was
year?
last year in like February time.
Okay, all right.
So it's a little cool,
Yeah,
but
it's cool
not that
sure.
cool. And I remember him just you want me to carry it? You look like you're struggling, just talking all this mess all the way across there. And I was like, no, I got it.
Tell him to shut up.
And then I got to the fence and I was like, I'm gonna puke. He was like, and then just talking crap the whole time. And after that, I was like, dang, man. And on that same hunt, it was my favorite hunt in whole because one, we shot, I mean, the biggest coyote I'll probably ever see. And then that same night, my brother-in-law hunts with us. So it's me, my brother-in-law, and my nephew, and my daughter. And I remember we were calling fox at this time, and my brother-in-law went to shoot at the fox, and he missed. Well, anyways, we move on to the next stand. Just we didn't travel far for fox. We maybe 600 yards across this deal, and then set up, try again. And my nephew was shooting this time. Right, same guy my brother-in-law just had. We called in a fox, same distance, same scenario. Everything played out the same.
Yeah.
He shoots, knocks his fox down. He leans over to his dad and goes, "Hey, it's not the gun." And that just the way it played out with two teenage kids, and us. It was my first time doing it with the kids. I normally do it with buddies or not buddies.
Sure.
And you get to certain nights and they're it's slow, or they start your buddies start, man, we ain't doing too good. Let's just call it this and that. But I think it was my favorite because them kids were we'd have a few dry stands and we're like starting to get down, like, man, maybe it's getting to that part of the night and you see nothing. And them kids, man, they were just, hey, come on, next stand, let's go.
Yeah,
next stand,
awesome.
we got it. We ended up doing, we were like 4th place overall out of like 40 something teams, and then we ended up winning the deal for the most fox on the side. And
that's cool.
It was that makes it my favorite, just because I've been always doing it with my buddies, and now with my kids and nephews and old enough, they can.
Now you're the mentor.
They go, and I get to teach some stuff, and I have more fun watching them than.
I think you're gonna trump that one maybe coming up soon.
Maybe.
So he's going to Africa. He told me that he last night he won. Well, it was your brother, right?
Brother-in-law, yep.
Yeah, I mean, great story. I'm excited. I'm hyped up for you, man. I can't wait to see some pictures.
Oh,
and I hope you bring back like a wildebeest or something, and you mount it.
Yeah, at the moment we got a choice of a few, and 2 different kinds of wildebeests, and blessed buck, Impala, springbuck, warthog, a couple other animals that we have choices of, and
man, I'm
looking forward to it. I want to, going back to the bow and rifle thing.
Yeah.
Kind of funny deal. We were talking about it last night. I told my brother-in-law, I said, dude, I'm taking my bow.
Yeah, I would.
And he was like, dude, ain't happening. He goes, I ain't taking mine. And I'm like, why? He goes, Africa, we're bottom of the food chain. I'm taking a gun. And I was like,
bring a sidearm or something, you gotta try at least.
See, I'll probably take a rifle with me just for the fact of we get so many days of hunting.
Yeah.
If it's not panning out with the bow,
I would make that first. Are you gonna make it first, like in the shoot?
Very first time.
Yeah.
Bow first thing, and then we get 5 days of hunting. So probably the first, I want to say 3, but we'll see how it goes. For sure, the first 2.5 days, I want to spend half the time bow hunting.
Sure.
And then if it's happening with the bow, I'll stick with it. But if it ain't happening with the bow, then probably move on to the rifle. I don't know if I'll bring mine or say, hey, let me get your rifle, because you brought a rifle, I'll wear a bow. You can shoot a bow, something. We'll figure it out.
That's cool though. That's gonna be a fun trip for you. I did learn that he does not like turkey hunting, so I'm gonna have to fix that this spring. I'll have to teach him the correct way.
They beat me every time.
Hey, that's part of the fun, all right? And you're not a quitter. You already told me that. So now we got to go try.
I got too much pride. I get in trouble for that all the
time. So moving on, we're going to talk about your tracking service. So that includes, like, we already talked about it a little bit. How long have you been in the tracking service, like deer or animal tracking service? And then how long did it take you to teach your dog? And then what kind of dog training did you actually have to do in order to get there?
So the dogs I have now, they just turned 6 in April. So
they're not, they're
not too old, but they're
in the middle.
They're in the middle of their age range, I guess.
What kind of dogs are they?
They're black mouth cur.
Okay.
If you know what
Oh,
those
I know
are.
exactly what a cur dog is.
Some people don't. So, let's see. I started it because, my daughter, when she shot her first deer, we had a guy come and track, and he had an old dog that was really old, and I knew he had a blood dog, but before that, I didn't really know about the blood tracking dog thing, right? Because I've always just kind of done everything myself, and I figured out a lot on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I've never really knew that. I knew it was a thing, but I didn't know it was like a thing, that you could call somebody for.
Yeah.
So I had a buddy that he had a little beagle dog, and he was older, and I knew the dog has found some deer before, and my daughter shot her first deer, and he was from the same town I was from, and I called him and, hey dude, I know the dog's old, but you think he can do it? He's like, man, I don't know, he's pretty old. He was like, but maybe we'll see what we can do. So we showed up, and he did it, and he tried, and we never found it. And I was like, all right. So the next morning we went and sat in that deer stand, the same stand we shot out of. I was like, all right, now there's daylight. The next morning, let's go walk and see what we can find. So me and my brother went and just spread apart a little bit, and we were just going to grid it, just see what happened. Because the only sign we found was a little bit of hair, and when the deer ran off, he ran 30 yards, ran into a tree, turned around, ran the other way, ran into another tree, and then ran in the woods. We're like, okay, he's got to be hit.
Yeah.
He's doing all that. But we couldn't find anything. So that's what we called the dog. Called that buddy of mine that had that dog, and he was like, yeah, dude, I'll come, I'll try. He said, but no guarantees, he's pretty old. I was like, all right.
This is the beagle.
This is the beagle dog. And he looked, and they walked, and we spent probably an hour and a half looking, and he finally was like, hey man, I don't know if he's just not feeling it or what, but we didn't find anything. I'm like, okay. Well, we went the next day, like I said, we were gridding, and we found the deer. And no fault on them. They wandered pretty close to the deer. And I don't know if they were tracking it and they just missed it, or if he came back there later in the night and just happened to die there, or what happened. I don't know.
Sure.
And I just thought, man, that was pretty cool. I think it was a little bit different the way I'll do it. They had the dog on a lead, like some states are lead and some states are off lead, just depends where you're at. He had him on a long lead and all this, and I was like, man, there's got to be a better way to do that. I feel like if the dog was able to run, on his own, he would have had, even if he got lucky and ran into it, it just seemed like the chances were better. And at the time, I had some puppies was gonna be having some puppies, because it was towards the end of season. It was during the late youth when she shot this deer.
Yeah.
I was about to have puppies, or planning on about to having puppies, and I was like, and then whenever they were born, a couple of them went to some other homes, a couple of them went to a couple of friends. I was like, well, I got these 2 puppies left. I guess I'll start pig hunting again with dogs. I've always had dogs for anything and everything. Pigs. Grew up, my grandpa ran coyote dogs, same kind of way you do pigs here in Texas.
Okay.
But they did it with coyotes and just all kinds of stuff. Anyways, I had that, and I'm like, well, I've had coon dogs, I've had this, I've had that, but this is something different.
Mm-hmm.
I bet, and it made me think of that track, and I thought, I bet I could train a dog to do that. Now, it goes back to not all dogs are made to hunt. Not all dogs, even if they're bred to hunt. And I got lucky that the 2 I have, they do well. And
curs they're pretty much bred for that kind of stuff, aren't they?
Yep. And then, their parents were pig dogs. The dad was a pig dog. It was one of the guy's top dogs. The dad was a buddy of mine, had the dog, and then I had the female. She was pretty smart.
Yeah.
She wasn't the fastest dog, but she had brains, and I liked the brains more than athleticism, to be able to figure stuff out rather than just, hey, I can outrun you. So I was like, well, he got brains, and he's got some athleticism, and he's a pretty smart dog. He's pretty well behaved, this and that, and just features that I liked. And I was like, yeah, dude, we can have puppies. He wanted a puppy out of my female, and so, we made that trade. And I had a couple puppies, and I had 2 left. And I got thinking about it, and I was like, man, I wonder if I can train these dogs to train. So I had some old blood that I knew I was thinking about doing something like that. So I saved some blood from a deer,
Yeah.
And, I started when they, through the summer, when they were 3, 4 months old, I just started showing them easy little, what I could think of to train a dog, just sprinkle some blood down the road. And I was trying to walk on, like a 2-track dirt road. I was thinking, if I walk on this side and I sprinkle the blood on this side, I can tell if the dogs are tracking me or tracking the blood.
Huh. Yeah.
And then I was leaving like such a wasted good deer meat, but I was leaving some deer burger or like some back strap or something at the end of it with a little bit of fur or something at the end.
Yeah, you got a reward or something, right?
Reward, right? Firm believer in a lot of animals, whether they're wild or domesticated, are going to do a lot more for somebody food related rather than just good boy, right?
I agree. Yeah.
So I was leaving food. Yeah, right. Making them work when they're hungry. When they get to the end, they had food. And then they got to where I was going, easy straight down a 2-track, and I was watching them. Oh yeah, they're staying on that blood. And then I was going back to the reading thing. Went to doing more reading and figuring stuff out. And I was learning other stuff like about tracking shoes and this and that. Tracking shoes, you know what those are?
Is that like?
It's like a rubber sole that has a hole cut out in the bottom that you can put deer hooves in the bottom.
Like the interdigital gland that's in the deer hoof.
You could. So that only works when you find deer that ran.
Okay.
From what I understand, I don't know. I could be wrong. But from what I understand, deer that are in stress or injured only release that scent when stress or injured.
Really? I didn't know that. Yeah.
That's what I've gathered. I don't know if that's fully right or fully wrong. I don't know.
Okay.
But that's what I figured out. So earlier in the year when I was shooting deer, if they ran a little bit with my bow, right? Generally when you shoot them with a bow, they're going to run a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was taking the feet, keeping blood.
Yeah.
And I'll be 100% honest, I didn't have the money for tracking shoes, so I just bought a good pair of rubber boots and zip tied some legs to the side of it and walked
wow,
down the thing.
really? That's cool.
Right? And I mean,
it's smart.
I think are rubber boots fully non-scent? No, I don't think so, because you can put on rubber boots and go play hide and seek with your dog, and your dog's going to find you every time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're going to. And so I just started making a little bit longer tracks, adding turns, adding this and that, and they got to where they were finding it. And then the beginning of deer season, I was like, I don't know about most people, but for me, for the longest time, deer hunting, I got to the point to where, well, one, where it really wasn't me, it was my wife. She was like, hey, you're going to spend all that time going hunting. Why don't you actually shoot something rather than hanging out waiting for one deer? So I was like, okay. So what I started doing was first or second day of deer season, my first good sized doe that walked by, I was shooting.
Yeah.
That way I could, hey, we put some meat in the freezer.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna sit and look for my buck. And as we all know, sometimes it happens, sometimes it don't.
I get you.
And so I shot that doe, and
you were telling me that you were showing me on your phone that you have some really good setups where there's a lot of daylight deer and everything, and you were lunging them, and on purpose because you wanted to track them. You wanted a humane kill, but
I wanted humane, but also I wanted, a lung shot deer. Typically, I mean, sometimes they're going to go 20, sometimes they're going to go 100.
Right, exactly.
I was hoping, which I did have a few. You shoot them, they run 30 yards.
Right.
Lay down. Which I still put the dogs on. I wanted them.
Do you start them further back though,
nope.
Just right where you hit them?
I tried to treat it. I started thinking about it. Okay, well, if I'm going to do it as a service to people, I had to look at it like I've never been here before.
I got you.
So sometimes I'd bring the dogs with me and they would just hang out in the truck, or they would stay at the house. And then they had to learn, okay, at this time we're coming out of our kennel, we're going to get in the truck. When we get to the ranch, we're going to be getting out of the truck, we're putting our collars on, we're going to be starting around this area. I generally try to start at the hit site a lot of times, but sometimes the hit site's a long ways away from that, and sometimes I try to shave some of that distance off.
Yeah.
But with that, it just depended. Sometimes I was hoping the deer, it sounds bad to say, but I was hoping the deer would go farther. And of course, at the beginning, it was all easy. I mean, I didn't need the dog to find it. They could have found it. or you could have found it on your own, no problem.
Sure.
But I wanted them to have the work, and then I did that for an entire deer season, shooting deer, watching them run off. With the bow. Generally, I did the high more chances of running, right? With a bow, everybody knows they're going to run. Sometimes you get a few that fall over, but for the most part,
they're going to take off.
They're going to run. Most of the time, if you shoot a deer with a bow and he falls over, from experience,
ticker,
shoot him again.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's a high back spinal shock. They're going to lay there for 5 minutes, and everybody's going to be like, "Oh, he got up. I don't know what happened."
Yeah.
Well, if he lay there for 5 minutes and got up, he didn't hit anything good. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
And then anyway, so I did all that, and then did that for a year, and then kept working them. And
now that was just you working your dogs.
Just me.
That's cool.
I was calling my brother, my wife, my kids.
Just kept it in the family.
Friends that I knew that hunted real close to me. I'm not going to go drive 3 hours to go do anything crazy. Heck, I don't even drive 3 hours now. I try not to. And I just anybody that I knew that hunted close. Hey, if you shoot one, if he runs, call me. I want to work these dogs. So I did that. And worked them through the off season. I mean, we tracked, I don't even know how many, a bunch. I had MLD property that we shot, close to 30 deer a year on.
Yeah.
And, so we had those, all 30 of them. We tried to track most of those. And then, of course, all of our other deer on private places or whatever it may be. Did that for a year, and then through the summer, and then it got to the next deer season. And we started doing the same thing, and then finally I seen a thing on Facebook, and it was close. It was like 30 minutes from the house. I wrote the guy and said, "Hey, give me a chance. I got a young dog. I'd love to do the chance." And we went out there, and the guy did, from at the time I didn't really know, how to talk people and ask questions and this and that, which I owe learning some of that stuff from guys who are dog handlers in the state, from talking to them. And, it's brought me to meeting a few really, really good people. And they kind of, hey man, I'd ask them questions. I'm a learner. So I was asking questions doing this, and then, went out there. It was a gut shot deer. Guy did everything right. He shot it with his bow, and he gut shot it. Made a bad shot. He knew it was bad. Seen the deer run. The deer ran closer to him when he shot. He shot the deer at 22 yards. I remember this. This is our first one, right, for the public. Shot the deer at 22 yards. Flinched or something. Got excited, expecting the bow to go out. I don't remember exactly what happened, but he made a bad shot. The deer ran closer to him and stopped 7 yards from his tree stand. He was sitting in a little 12-foot ladder stand.
Yeah.
And deer stopped 5 yards from him. He could see way back and thought, you know what? It was in the morning. He thought, you know what? I'm going to go back to the house and see what I can do. And then I seen that thing, and I was like, give me a chance. And of course, there was a lot of other people, and they're like, hey, call this guy, call this guy, call this guy.
Sure.
And it wasn't me, right? It was more known, well-known people. And the guy gave me a chance, and I went out there, and, it was a fresh track. There's not been any people walking on it or anything like that. And we went like 760 yards and found the deer dead, piled up in the cedar brush. We found 2 beds where the deer had laid down twice and got back up and moved.
Was it as hard as you thought it was going to be? Or were you nervous you weren't going to
I was very nervous.
Yeah.
But whenever we got there...
Sort of a make or break situation, right?
I felt make or break because, like I said, going back to social media, Facebook, right? I was on there and no one reached out to me. Right? I reached out to the guy and was like, give me a chance.
Yeah.
And so I felt make or break. And I went out there and I did it. And I was like, this is awesome. And I went out there and I started the dogs where he said he shot it because that's the only known area we had. And we tracked and we hit a trail. And I watched my dogs leave me, go to work, and I track off lead so they can go
you just remote
wherever
collar?
they please. I got it.
Yeah, you got a collar?
Collar. I run a Garmin, so I can see where they're at, what they're doing, running, walking, standing.
Wow.
Everything. And then I watched them, and we stood there for a minute, and they were, 50, 80, 100.
You're like, they're on it.
200. And I was like, I can look at my map and see where they're going, how they're moving. And I was like, do we wait? You know, at first I didn't know. I didn't tell the guy.
Right.
You know, like I was just like thinking to myself, like, do we wait here?
Mm.
Do we
Follow
do
him?
I follow him? Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is my first like Ford customer, right? I was like, I was there for free. I didn't want to get paid. I was
Yeah.
there. I wanted to
Yeah.
prove
Right.
that I had something. And we went out there, and they got about 200, 250 yards from us, and they were still steadily just moving. And I was like, at first, in my mind, I'm like, oh,
They're
man,
off on
these dogs are just running off. You know, here we go.
I can imagine.
So I'm looking at my map, and I'm like, hey, man, let's go ahead and walk up here and not keep up with them, but let's
Yeah.
get to walking. And I started walking through there, and everyone, you know, and at first I was like staring at the ground, like, please tell me to run. I was seeing a little bit of blood here and there, and I was like, okay, well, we're doing something right.
Oh, that's good.
We get to going and moving along, and I kind of quit watching the ground. Honestly, I just was getting more, the confidence that they knew what they were doing, and
Yeah.
just got going. We were probably 400 yards in, and I just happened to look down, and there was like, it was, I think it was the only rock right there.
A little piece
And
of
it
blood
was
on
like the tiniest speck of
Yeah.
blood on it. And I was like, I don't know how I seen that.
Yeah.
I don't know what in my
By
mind,
chance.
if it was whatever other thing telling me, hey, look down. And I just looked down, and there was that tiny, I'm talking pin drop
Wow.
on that rock. And I was like, okay. And then it showed we were probably, like I said, they were 200. We started walking. We got to where they were when I stopped, and I looked down, and it showed they were 500 whatever away. And I was like, my deal vibrated and
Yeah.
beeped, and I was like, well,
Does that mean
I
they
know
stopped?
from-
Does that mean
they stopped.
Oh.
It showed me that they stopped. They
Yeah.
treed. And I was like, And I watched it. We stood there for a minute, and they stayed right there. And I was like, well, just going back
Yeah,
to
they're
thinking
on.
of my training that I've done and what they've done before, I was like, well, they're stopped. So let's go up here and get your deer. I told the guy. We were, at this point, we're 500 yards away from them. I said, hey, let's go grab your deer.
Yeah.
And he was like, how do you know? Yeah, I was like, let's go grab your deer. I was confident.
My dog's
At this
running.
point, I was kind of a little cocky, but a little confident. And I'm glad it worked. You know, I had full faith that this is what it was. And then we walked up there, and sure enough, we went beating into this cedar thicket, and there he was. He was dead. I don't know how long he's been dead for or what, but there he was. And man, after that, I was like, okay. And then after that, I had a couple of the guys that were mentioned in that Facebook post. I posted the picture of it, and then they reached out to me and said, hey man, you know, talk to me a little bit. Some gave me some grief at the beginning, and now I actually talk to the guys quite a bit. And after that, you know, it kind of started a friendship between people, and
Yeah.
started a thing. And after that, I was like, after that, you know, that guy actually on these hunting pages, you know, somebody else around the same area needed a deer track. And he said, hey man, call this guy.
Yeah. Giving you props.
So I started going. I did the first deer season like that.
What year is this?
This was, well, 5 years ago from now.
Okay.
So there's 6. Like I said,
Yeah.
the first year,
Yeah.
I was strictly myself and friends and family. And
So they have 5 seasons under their belt.
5 deer seasons.
Wow.
of tracking. The first season, like I said, whenever they had maybe 10 deer we tracked for other people. And then of course I was continuing, you know, myself, family, friends,
Yeah.
you know, on the MLD property for myself and my kids and
So
everybody.
do you like keep a log of whoever you meet? You know, like, oh, this guy I met on this day, and or take a picture with him or something.
I thought about keeping a log of I went to this track, this is what
Yeah.
it was, you know, not necessarily who I meet and what it is, but more on the lines of this is what I was told, this is what we found, this is the way the deer reacted. But I have a pretty good memory from, I don't know why, I did well in school, I did well in stuff, pretty good memory, so like I remember a lot of them. Some of them I don't, but most of them I do. And like I said,
Do you remember the deer more, or do you
I
remember the
remember-
person more?
I remember more the deer
Yeah.
than the people. Like I've gotten a couple, actually, to come back to you were asking about the people, that first deer that I tracked, it was last year, the second day of bow season. I had a guy call, and it was nowhere close to that where that one was. It was actually here right outside of Killeen.
Okay.
And between Killeen and Florence, I had a guy call me and said, hey, this is so-and-so. You tracked a deer from my dad a few years ago over here, and you guys found it. And I was like, okay. I said, and then I, went through asking a bunch of questions, because at this point I've learned to screen, asking questions.
Yeah.
Where, what, when, how, what this happened. And then got there, and I got to talking to the guy, and I was like, man, do you happen to know where that deer was, like area? And he told me where it was in town, and he started telling me some details about it, how far it was, and I was like, huh, that's got in the phone and just went way back, 5 years worth of pictures. And I was like, was it this one? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, and I didn't want to tell the guy, but I did tell him. I was like, man, I'll be honest with you, man, that was the first customer that I've ever had was that deer.
Why did he call you in the first place? What was he calling you for?
The guy that I went between Killeen and Florence?
Yeah.
To go track a deer.
Oh, okay. So it was his. I was just trying to link them together.
I don't remember if it was his dad or his father-in-law.
One of the two.
You. And it was actually the deer I was tracking then, which was last year's season, just last year.
Yeah.
Was a deer shot for his wife. And I really, from screening and talking to him and interrogating, basically, I really didn't want to go track the deer. I knew just from previous stuff that it was probably a non-lethal type shot.
Yeah.
And when I got that, and they were adamant, hey man, you're coming. Like, we want you to come.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I don't want to, I don't want you guys to.
I wonder if it was like the wife feeling so bad or guilty about the shot that she
I
had
think
to
it was
like
more,
apply something,
I think more peace of mind.
Right.
Because they knew I could, from seeing me find the one deer, I think, and how quickly it happened. I mean, we were at that call for no more than 45 minutes. The very first one, we were there for 45 minutes, and we had him found, and without. And, that was with getting there, talking for a minute, letting dogs go and slowly walking in there and everything and talking afterwards.
Yeah.
I remember it being only like 45 minutes being there. And
you left such an impression on that guy that 5 years later, they called you back.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's awesome.
Sure enough, we ended up finding his wife's deer. I think it was only 400 yards away. We jumped him out of the cedar thicket and ran him, and we got a good look at him. He come across this opening. We just happened to be standing there. He ran back towards us. He come across an opening, and he was, like I assumed, hit.
Yeah.
Not, that high void area type, and deer was running very healthy. And they ended up seeing the deer again a few more weeks on camera, still alive. So,
did they ever harvest it? Don't know.
I don't know.
Oh,
I know those are the best. You can't find them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
We tried our best.
Yeah.
Like any other tracker in the state, they're gonna try. And when you don't find it, I think it's more of a pride thing, and you start losing faith, and you're like, man, it hits harder when you screened it and you're talking to them and you went because you felt like, man, this deer's a dead deer, and then you go and you don't find it, and you're like, oh man, we left one out there.
That's rough.
And then it's always a good message when you get back of them sending you a picture a couple weeks later. Hey man, he's back, and it's like, oh, thank God.
Do you ask them specifically, like, hey, if you see this deer, send it to me?
I try to. I actually got a text message earlier today. A guy called me to track a deer, and ended up he wanted to wait till the morning, and then he called me the next morning. He goes, hey man, you know what? Now it's daylight. I'm just gonna walk. I'm not gonna waste your time. I already feel a little weird about it, so I'm just gonna walk and see it. I was like, all right, man. Well, just so you know, the more walking you do, the harder it makes for me. More contamination and whatever.
Man.
And I was like, all right, man, that's fine. You do you. And I actually got a text message earlier today and said, man, I've been looking every day, and no buzzards, no this, no that. I got a good feeling this deer's still alive. And I was like,
That
okay,
probably
cool.
makes you feel pretty good. It probably makes him feel pretty good too. So I guess I never told anybody like how I know or got to know him, and it was through social media like Facebook. You know, we're on the same pages and whatever here in the local area, and I've seen all the work that he does, and I saw his name come up over and over and over, and I'm like, man. And once we started One Mission Outdoors, you know, I have a whole list of people in my head that I think would be really interesting, and so I reached out to him because I just think what trackers do and you know what his business is about is really cool. So that's how I know who Dillon is, and I wanted to share that. But anyway, moving on. So I guess with tracking, you know, comes you say you interrogate people. So what are some things that people, if they're listening, the biggest mistakes that people can do that you just dread to hear whenever you either talk to them or maybe you get there and you're like, are you sure this is what happened? You know, did you go after that deer or something like that?
I would say most common mistake, right? That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, most common mistakes, bad mistakes made after possibly
wait time.
wounding. Yeah, wait time. Okay.
Wait time, and really, there's a. How do I? I'm trying to think how I can put it. I would say wait time, one is leading thing, and two is if they had any doubt in their mind in the beginning, right? Like we've all made that shot where you're like, you know, you heard a different sound.
Right.
Most of the deer we track are with bow and arrow, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I do track some with a rifle, you know, whether it being the gun got bumped on the way to deer camp or
Sure. Just bad shot. Yeah.
bad shot, you know, they were excited, you know, deer walked out.
Buck fever.
Deer walked out in this field and the feeder's at 100, but the deer's out there at 250 and they're thinking, man, this is a deer of a lifetime, and they're just winging one out there. Never shot that far ever, and they're just trying it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, some people do crazy stuff.
So
But I would say
most are
wait
archery.
time, and a lot of them are archery. I
Yeah.
would say probably 60 to 70% of the calls are a lot of archery stuff. You know, gun, it's got a little more thump to it whenever it hits, and then you got, you know, ammunition these days. They're made to, depending on what kind of bullets you buy, whether it's soft or hard, or you know, what's it going to do at impact. You know, and then I would say wait time, and then people not truly understanding anatomy of deer. You know, everybody tells you, you know, behind the shoulder, this, that, you know, whatever it may be, whatever you were taught by your grandpa or your dad growing up hunting. And, you know, like we shared that picture earlier, that deer, he was hit, and in a video, looks like that deer he's a goner. He should have never made it out of the field by shot. You know? But really, you know, you got your heart and lungs. You know, the deer built the way they are for a reason. They're tough animals, and their will to live is incredible.
I agree.
And you know, it's a little more forward than what people think. And then that you got real, you know, people think, oh, I hit him low and 2 inches behind the shoulder. That's a heart.
Mm-hmm.
When really, that low and 3-4 inches behind the shoulder is that's the front of that stomach. Coming up underneath everything right there, and it sits right on that diaphragm where it goes up at an angle, and it's sitting right there. You know, they hit just behind that diaphragm and its front of stomach. And that deer needs 8-9 hours to lay there or more because he's hitting the stomach rather than a heart. And deer's gonna, and then they think, oh, I smoked him. They sit there for 15 minutes and think, oh, I drilled him. And they get out, they start walking, and then they don't realize it because they're following decent blood. You know, there is good blood that come from there, and then the next thing you know, they look up and they're like, dang, I'm 400 yards away.
Right.
And most people get so, another mistake is most people get so focused right here, and they're not, you know, you got to look up, you know, and so, they jump them and don't even realize that they're picking up.
So you're saying that you got to know a deer's anatomy. You got to study where you might hit them, right?
Mhm.
Especially in the core vitals
Right.
or whatever.
You want to go behind shoulder, sure.
How long do you reckon people should wait
Hour.
after a hit? 1 hour minimum.
Minimum.
Okay.
I think.
If
Personally, right?
if that deer goes down 60, 70 yards and they can see him,
You see that deer fall, give him 15, 20 minutes,
yeah,
walk over there. If that deer
Okay.
makes it out of sight, or if you're hunting in like thick timber, and you can hear him,
right,
you can hear running through leaves when it's quiet like that for a long ways. And if you hear him, just completely fold up, not just leaves moving from deer running, but
Sure.
hearing, crash.
right, yeah,
Give him 20 minutes, whatever, 15, 20 minutes. Yeah, go get him. But most of the time, I stick to this is personal belief, right?
yep,
If you do not see that deer fall, you should give him an hour. Because I get a lot of calls that are, I'll go back just the other day. I had a call, guy shot deer behind the shoulder, a little bit quartering to,
mm-hmm.
shot the deer, and didn't hear him crash, but heard him run off. Okay. Well, you get passed through, going through a list of questions, what kind of broadheads, what
Yep.
kind of this, and he said, I sat there for an hour. I said, okay, cool. Good job. So then what? Right? There's a reason he's calling me now.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, I sat there for an hour. I said, looked at your arrow, what'd you find? He goes, well, I was standing there looking at the arrow, and all of a sudden I heard something get up, and I turned around, that deer was 40 yards from me. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a hard one, right? You sat there for an hour. And the guy actually did everything right. He sat there, he jumped the deer up, and as soon as he stayed in the woods, he called me. Hey, man, this is how I shot it.
Yeah.
I went through my list of stuff I'm asking him, interrogated him, and I said, okay, well, if you want me to come, leave him alone, right? Because the farther you push him, the farther I gotta go, the farther
Right.
makes it harder on the dogs,
Mm-hmm.
makes it harder on everything, right? So just leave him be, go hang out in the truck, get you something to eat. I'm gonna finish what I'm doing, and then I'll head your way. And then he then informed me that he was on some public land, and the way the deer went was the way to the truck. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I can't go out because it necks down shortly after me. He's sitting in a great spot, by the way. It necks down from a lake and private, big fields on private lake on the other side. They have to come through there.
Right.
So he knew the deer went that way, and he didn't want to bump him, so he called me.
Okay.
So the only thing I had to go on was, I don't know if you guys use Onyx or whatever you guys, whatever.
I'm a hunt stand guy, but yeah.
And then he calls me, drops me a pin on Onyx. I'm like, okay, I'll be there about this time. I got there, it was like 2 hours later. Guy's still hanging out in the woods.
Just
Hanging out. And I'm like, all right, man. So I called him, let him know I was there. He sent me a screenshot of his deal, showed the track going in, like this is where you got to walk.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm walking in there, and this was an easy one. My dogs, they'll track, and then from tracking a lot, my male, not so much my female, but my male, if he's got the wind with him, he's gonna pick his head up every once in a while. And can I shortcut this?
Huh.
He's a cheater. I think he's a cheater. I hate that he does it,
Yeah.
but I like that he does it. It's a win-lose with him.
It's pretty cool.
I think it's a great thing that he has in his pocket.
Yeah.
I've never taught him it. It's just something he figured out on his own. And I think it's a great tool he has.
There's a process though.
But sometimes we spend a little longer on stuff because he'll be working a track and he knows he don't have the wind. He knows he don't have it.
Okay.
We'll be tracking this way and the wind will be blowing with us. He don't have it.
Right.
And every once in a while you can watch him. He'll go 40, 50 yards working the track, nose down working. And all of a sudden you'll see him, he'll do one of these. And I'm like, dude, quit cheating. Just keep going, But anyways, we went to walking in there, and sure enough, we come over this little berm, and we started getting where it's thick. We were about 400 yards from where the guy said he jumped the deer. And I was like, and the wind was funneling right down to us. I was like,
This is good.
yeah. I let him go, and sure enough, we walked up there, and I wasn't even paying attention to him. I was just trying to get to the guy, And Dill beeped and vibrate, showed treat. I looked up, they were 220 yards that way, and I was like, we walked over there to the deer. We found the deer. I called the guy, hey man, where you at? He said, I'm sitting at that pin I dropped you. I said, well, we're about 220 yards this way.
This is like 20 minutes after you get there?
Yeah. It was pretty short, yeah. We had to walk in a little bit, but
Yeah.
we got back there. We were just over a mile, right at a mile in there from where we found the deer.
Wow.
So we walked in, called the guy, hey man, never met him, never talked to him other than on the phone. And I'm calling him, telling him, hey man, I'm standing at your deer. And he was like, what? I'm like, yeah, I got your deer.
Drop
Come on,
you
man.
on next pin.
He's like, well, where are you at? And I said, well, we're about 220 yards from you. Just walk straight ahead. We'll be up here. And he's like, all right. He comes beating through the brush, finally makes it to us. He's like, I'm like, is this him? Just, I mean,
Yeah.
I've had some crazy stuff happen
Really?
on public land.
Yeah.
Actually, one of them, some crazy stuff. That's why I asked him if it was his deer, was for a guy that's on y'all's team.
Oh, okay.
So tracking a buck for him, and it was actually a buck that he ended up getting last year, but
Okay.
and it was from the year before
Yeah.
that we tracked him.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And
yeah. I know
we-
the story.
We actually I made sure to ask, hey, this is your deer, right? And he was like, that's him, and I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Did he
And then
lung shot him or what? Did he?
He
hit him
was-
high or something.
The deer was quartered a little bit more than what he thought it
You
was.
said it was quartered towards.
Quartering to him,
So
arrow
under-
buried in. Yep, I mean, perfect. Where you would want to hit one if they were dead broadside.
Ah, okay.
But he was quartered to a little more, and I think it come out just
Yeah.
about the last rib.
You got to aim for the exit.
And
Yeah.
but at a 1/4 shot aiming for the exit,
That's
You
pretty
got a
hard.
lot of-
Yeah.
a lot of bone in that.
I don't
front
like
chest.
shooting quartering toward.
I'm a big
unless
fan
it's a hard quarter. Like if it's, I just can't do it.
I'm a big
I
fan
don't
of
risk it.
slightly away.
Yeah.
I still
yeah.
want to put it behind the shoulder,
Yeah, absolutely.
but more of a fan of away than two.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I get a lot of calls every year of full-on frontal shots, and
That's terrible.
I do not. There's so much bone and so
Yeah,
much.
meat.
You got so much.
Yeah.
And it's so little of it actually a kill area to try it with a bow.
Man.
But we keep going on other stuff. But going back to your thing, I would definitely say wait time. And also, if they get any doubt in their mind of like, man, that was a funny shot. I mean, a lot of trackers are charging nowadays.
Yeah.
And it is our time, and dogs are not cheap to have, and all the equipment and time. But if you get any doubt, I'd say that's another if people get a doubt in their mind, then they go in there and start looking, and then they
Yeah.
get farther along, and then they end up back at camp or whatever, being like, man, I got this deer, I've tracked him this far.
What's
I
the
don't know
max?
what's going on.
What's the max yards that you think someone should go if they're gonna like attempt to track, and then you got to stop at a certain point?
I think that depends on going back to the wait time thing, and then also how you think you hit the deer. Right.
Okay.
Like, and the best thing, I would say, a lot of people, they shoot and they let excitement get the better of them, and you really, just like with filming hunts, I'm sure it's a different game, right? When you start filming, because then you got to
Yeah.
think about, I'm trying to make this shot, I'm trying to get the deer in camera. You're having to think about a lot of stuff while
Yeah.
doing that, so you're everywhere. But you kind of have to put the same kind of mentality into if you're not filming. You make a shot, you really got to think about, okay, just
Yes.
like when you're target shooting
Exactly.
in the backyard, you draw, you're thinking about, got my anchor,
Yep.
however you want your string, you want your nose, you want it here, you want your kisser button, whatever you use,
Right.
to make your anchor point. Doing all that, you want to think about all of that stuff when you're going to shoot, and then you go to shoot, just like target shooting. You shoot, you follow through with your shot, you're watching your arrow, boom, hits the target. Okay, cool, that one was good. You get your next arrow, you're repeating it. Just you want to treat it like a practice situation. You practice
Exactly.
like most people who shoot a bow. I shoot almost every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I would, but
I shoot almost every day, and a lot of people I know that archery hunt, they shoot a lot of time.
Right.
And you want to go through the motions, what you practice for, right? Think,
Exactly.
good back wall, all your stuff. And then once you shoot, it doesn't stop. you got to look at it. You watch an arrow, it hits the deer, and then you want to watch the deer. Pay attention to what the deer's doing. How did he run? Did he just take off out of there? Did he mule kick? Is he running with his tail up or his tail down? Is he hunched up? Oh man, that hurts. Is he?
Do you have a go-to book or a go-to like video series on YouTube or something that you can like watch some of this stuff, right? I mean, the Outdoor Channel has great stuff. You know, THP, they have some really good stuff because they show a lot of their hits, and you can see the deer's reaction, exactly what you're talking about.
I don't know of any in particular.
Yeah.
You know, I do like you said, THP. I like those guys.
Yeah.
You know,
They're great.
and I like more the YouTube stuff than the TV stuff because the TV they're going to show you so much, but I'm going to show you so much.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So then like more of
lot
like
of
the
farm
YouTube or smaller guys or whatever are going to show you all of it. Right. They're going to edit some of it, but they're going to show a lot of it. I think watching stuff like that or just random, just going YouTube is and you can build a world by watching YouTube. I mean, you can figure out. I don't know anything about cars. I'm not a mechanic.
Right.
But I can go change the transmission of my truck from watching YouTube if I really want to.
Yeah.
You know
absolutely.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm sure if you typed in, you know, like archery shot deer, you know, with whatever you're looking for, you could find it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think YouTube is a good whatever. And then just, I don't know of any books in particular. I'm an internet searcher. I go down wormholes. I'll start with one thing and next thing you know, I'm way over here on the same kind of subject, but way something different. And then just, I think learning a lot. Trackers generally, like anything, trappers, trackers, anything like that are going to know more than most, right? Because you see more.
Exactly.
You know, but I track so many deer.
And you're a taxidermist.
And taxidermist, so I get to see a lot of deer. But like, seeing the stuff, just you see more of it, so I'm able to figure out more. You know, just eventually, past repeats itself, right? So you end up you get a phone call, man, I hit this deer, blah blah blah. You know, it ends up being the same story after a while, and then you can put pieces together of stuff you've done previously to kind of put it together.
You know what's cool is like you're a self-taught bow hunter, right? I'm a self-taught bow hunter too.
Self-taught, taxidermist, self-taught.
Yeah, you have all these hobbies, right? But you learn through word of mouth, education, practicing, things like that. And I mean, that's been happening for generations.
And I've never promoted any of my taxidermy or tracking. It's like, you know, going back to where it started. I wrote it to a guy, hey man, if you need that deer found, give me a chance. And he gave me a chance, you know, like, thank you. You know, I don't remember the guy's name. I wish I did. You know, that way I can remember his name. And hey, this was my first one. And then in the same, going back, you know, talking about stuff that you feel like makes or breaks you. I had a deer that was a couple days had went by. Well, I say a couple days. It was knocking on the door 30-something hours, and everybody and their brother was on there. Hey, you need to call this guy. You need to call this guy. Call this guy. And it was my name, a couple other names. And all these people bickering back and forth about who's going to go and whatever, whatnot. And I'm the type, if you put my name out there, I'm going to be like, thanks, here's my number.
Yeah, whatever happens.
Yeah, whatever happens, happens. There's plenty of guys out there who can get it done, and then there's plenty of guys out there who are going to not get it done. And I'm a big believer, and I'm not going to put anybody down. I think everybody deserves a fair shake. I think you got to make or break yourself. And I ended up going to that track, and we were there for a very short period of time, and like 5 minutes or less type time, and had that deer found. And I wrote on. I'm kind of a crap talker sometimes, and so of course in that post it's got like 600 comments on it and stuff. You know, I put on there, pulling up now, boys, and 5 minutes later I'm posting a picture of the deer. And ever since then, you know, all the guys who are from a little farther away that I talked to are like, hell yeah, dude, way to be the man, you know, and all this stuff. And
competition, man. Like, I mean, you should be proud of what you do.
I think stuff like that is what kind of helped me, you know, I've never advertised. Everything is, if I go track a deer, they got my number from somebody or something, and then after, I think 2 years ago, I finally half advertised. I called Texas Blood Trackers, the guy who runs that, and talked to a few guys who are a part of that. And what it is just a website online. It's got a bunch of people in Texas that track deer. And
Yeah.
I got a hold of the guy and said, hey man, would you mind putting my name on there? Now, I don't know what kind of screening, if he just puts anybody on there or whatever it was, but they put my number on there. That's the only thing I have other than Facebook or Instagram that's out there with my number on it. There's no promoting, like you said, word of mouth. Everything I've done is because I've done something for somebody, or somebody did something for somebody that guy knows. So,
reputation goes a long way, especially in this industry and the hunting heritage and everything like that. So I think you're doing all the right things, and just keep it up. I mean, you're rocking and rolling. I see your name constantly during deer season, so I know you're pretty popular during that.
Half of those, some of those Facebook calls are no good,
Yeah.
and then some of them are pretty good tracks.
Sure.
And I'm up for a challenge, but at the same time, I heard a guy say the other day talking about some stuff. I was actually listening to a podcast about something, and they were talking about tracking deer, and the guy goes, well, you got guys who take every call, and their percentages are 40%,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't sound good to the public. But that guy's taking every call. And then you got guys who are sitting at 80, 90% finding deer. Well, that's the guy, most people are going to be like, man, this guy finds all of them.
Right.
90% or 80%, that's, you call a guy, man, I find 40% of my deer. Or you call this guy, man, I find 80% of my deer. Most of the time, you're going to go to this 80% guy.
Right.
Just
Right.
statistically, most people, the way their mind works, they're thinking,
Yeah. Oh, he finds
40% or 80 of them, I'm going
Yeah.
to go with the 80 guy.
But in reality, he's
Well, really,
only
the
tracked
80%. Well, no, I would say the 80% guy does like most guys who are a little bit more well known in the tracking industry. When you get on the phone with them, the guy's going to talk to you for 5 minutes, just bombarding you with questions.
Okay.
Like we were talking about the interrogating.
Okay.
And you get to that interrogating, and they're screening it heavy, and they're going to decide, I'm going or I'm not going, and it's using past stuff to figure out if that deer is a findable deer. They're going to take the deer who sounds most likely to find, or I wouldn't say most likely to find, I would say one that something
dead.
clicks in their mind of,
Yeah.
I found one I've heard this story before, I'm going to go and find this one.
Yeah.
Right? So then your odds are a little higher.
I got you.
And then, like I was saying, the thing I heard on the thing the other day was, 40% versus 80%. Guy talks about flipping a quarter, heads or tails. Most of the time, you're going to get like 70-30, one way or the other. But eventually, you flip that quarter enough, it's going to be 50-50.
Yeah.
You're just happen to be the guy who's only finding 40%. Every time his phone rings, he asks a couple questions. Where you at? What'd you shoot it with? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm on the way. And then he gets there.
But why is that one guy doing that? Is it just to try to get those reps, or try to earn that money, or whatever? Is it just probability? Hey, I'm going to find so many deer out of so many calls.
I think it's more like you were going with probability.
Yeah.
Right? Going back to the
Right.
right. You're flipping. You never
Flip
know.
a coin, yeah.
You never know. I mean, really, I'm sure if all other trackers have done it. They've had a call. They got on the phone. They talked about it and said, "No, I don't. I think this is something else." And then come find out, it wasn't what they thought. People are wrong. We're all wrong. It happens. But then you get the guys who, I think it's more chances. If you go track 100, you're eventually going to find a bunch of them.
Right.
Or you track 30 that you feel are going to be hurt. You're going to find 28, 29 of them.
Interesting.
I think it's more of your
Yeah.
odds, right? So there are guys in this state who are really good at what they do.
Yeah.
And I by no means think I'm the best, but I get in trouble from my wife all the time. My pride gets me in trouble, right? Because I have a hard time leaving without knowing where the deer is. Like, we're either gonna find it, or I'll spend way more time than I should, And if we take a line for a long ways and don't jump nothing, but yet we know we're on him and we're a long ways out. I'm gonna keep trying. Eventually, I'm like, okay, he's got to be somewhere. I'm just gonna start checking everywhere. I'm gonna be pushing them dogs because, like I said, that male, he's got that in his pocket to win one.
Yeah.
I'll set him up for success. I'll get downwind, start looping areas that he might be or where I think he could have gone, and try it. I mean, you never know. And I like I've said, get in trouble with my wife. I'll spend 3-4 hours out there looking for one, and then
You just don't know when to call it.
I don't know when to call it.
She's calling you.
Well, most of the time it's the hunters being like, "Hey, man, we're done, dude. Like, I don't think he's hurt. We've gone this far."
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. I have had a few that I've called. Like I tracked a Gims buck over the summer, and we went
Far.
solid line for a little over a mile. Never jumped him, never nothing. I backed out of there, walked all the way back to the truck, and with them things, they got the horns and they know how to use them. They're from Africa.
Oh yeah.
They are after stuff that's trying to eat them.
They're
Is
gonna
way
fight.
bigger than what a dog is. So they know how to use them horns. And I was told from a couple buddies I know that have tracked them before, hey, dude, if you can, stay as close as you can to your dogs. And I'm like, okay. So I tried to stay with them. Of course, they can go a lot faster than me through the brush. And we tracked for a little over a mile, and I was like, I'm out of here. We went a little over a mile. Come to find out, deer showed up, or the Gims buck showed up like 4 days later on camera, still alive and healthy. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Well, let's take a quick break, and we'll talk about your taxidermy and how to get a hold of you.
Oh yeah,
Sound good? All right, we're back from our break. The last couple things we're going to talk about today on the mission statement is Dillon's taxidermy services that he has been doing. Behind us, you can see it. We got some deer heads up on the wall, and these are some of his personal ones that he's done. So he's just going to talk to us about, how he got into it, and his current rates that he asked for, and then a little bit later we'll go over some contact info.
How it started? Well, started because I'll tell you, we went hunting, duck hunting. Took my daughter. She was like 4 or so, maybe. We were hunting layout blinds next to the pond, and I just stuffed her down by my feet and was like, when it comes open, just stay leaned up right here, and I'll shoot over you or something. You lay next to me, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
She was little, big old headphones on, and we shot this duck, and it was just a bluebill. I don't know what actual name. Bluebill. They got the black and they got like the purple and green hues to them, and then they kind of like zigzaggy striped on the back. And it was one of the ducks, shoot way out there on the end of your thing. It don't even look like he's been touched. It was a nice Drake bluebill. And she hung on to this bird like it was her pet. And after the hunt, she was like, "Dad, I want this." And I'm like, "What do you mean you want it?" She goes, "I want it on the wall." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
She was like, "I want it mounted." So I was like, "I'll see what we can do," And then so I took it home, put it in the freezer, called around to a couple people, and at the time, I was hearing what they were charging. I was like, "Oh boy, that's a little much for a bird, but I get it, right? It's your business,
right?
Whatever." And I was like, "Well, let me stick it in the freezer and take it up somewhere here in a week or so and see what we can do." Well, in the time, my wife was like, "Dillon, you do all this hunting and know all this crap about animals.
Yeah.
Why don't you see if you can do it?" I was like, "Me do what?" She was like, "Taxidermy. Put it together, mount it. I don't know." I was like, "Okay." So I went duck hunting again and shot a couple birds, and I was like, "I'm gonna try it." So I did some research, and going back to the YouTube thing, it's probably the worst place to learn stuff, but you can find some good stuff on there. And I found a couple videos, and some of them were really long and some of them were really short.
Yeah.
And went through that, and then did a couple birds just messing around in my garage, just whatever. And then finally I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna do this one for her. If it comes out good, like the rest, I'll tell you, the first couple
rough, huh?
They were Well, at first I didn't understand, like, you got to go through the washing, cleaning, all this stuff, and then drying it. Right after you wash it, you got to dry it. Well, at first I did everything. I was like, man, that drying was hard, So I put a bird together with it all wet, thinking, okay, this will be easier. I'll just dry it afterwards. And if you've ever if you can imagine what a duck would look like with mange, because the feathers didn't dry right when it was all together. That's what this thing, it didn't, all the small like down feathers were just like stuck down, and the only feathers were like his main feathers coming up, so it looked terrible.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, well, there's a reason you dry it before you put it on, right?
Yeah.
Trial and error, just figuring it out. And then finally I put the bird together and put a random thing on Facebook. Finally did the McKenna's bird, and had a couple buddies that hit me up and was like, hey dude, where'd you get that bird done? It looks okay, looks all right. I was like, dude, I did it. They were like, you did what, dude? What do you charge me to do? I'll send you a couple birds to do. So I had a buddy who sent me like 4 birds. He was like, what are you gonna charge me? I was like, I don't know, dude, pay for the material plus like $100 or something. He was like, you bet, I'm sending you like 4 of them.
Yeah.
I was like, all right. So I did those 4, and then from there, he put them up in his house. A couple buddies seen it, and they called me. And at first, it started off just doing birds, and I was like, okay, well. Then I had a guy that I knew seen a couple of the pictures of some of the birds I was doing. He called me and said, hey, dude, have you ever done a deer? I was like, nope, but I'm pretty sure if I can do a duck, I can do a deer. So I did a deer, and then turned into another deer, and now I'm trying to get away from doing birds.
Sure.
Just kind of lost the interest in them.
Yeah. No turkeys.
I will do a turkey, but most are not willing.
I'll
to
do
a
fans
turkey.
and wings. I just the cape I can't. I mean I don't.
Most
know
are
how,
not willing to do a turkey just because they're a lot of work.
Yeah, like a whole bird, right?
A whole full body turkey. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And there's so much cleaning, and then with turkey, you can do a turkey pretty easy, but if you want him to look good, you almost have to touch every feather on that turkey.
That's 5,000 feathers.
And you gotta, and if you want him to look real nice, you gotta make sure turkey's got them nice.
Yeah.
Everything's in a row. And you gotta lay everything in a row. And most are not willing to pay for a turkey. I have done a few turkeys. They come out okay.
I did wings this last year. I'd never done wings. Took a little bit of fidgeting and some makeshift woodwork, but I did it.
Most stuff is knowing feather track alignment,
right?
Going back to anatomy, right? That's
Absolutely,
all. Taxidermy is learning anatomy and how it's supposed to look, not what you think it's supposed to look like.
So, what's your typical turnaround time for like a buck or something?
A while.
Is it?
So taxidermy right now, anyways, is kind of my full-time, part-time.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I do work a normal job and work a normal 9 to 5, and then I do taxidermy the nights and evenings, weekends.
Track.
When I got track. This time of year is a busy.
Yeah, I
part
bet
of
it
the year.
is. Yeah.
I used to be a lot shorter, around 5-6 months, and then now I've just been telling everybody about a year and a half.
And that's average,
And average with bigger taxidermists, and then also, I'm sure everybody experiences it, COVID, material shortages, and shipping stuff nowadays, and stuff like that. I mean, it's I'd rather give a longer lead time and get it back to you shorter than give you a shorter lead time and have it longer. Kind of the stuff I'm working on right now, I've kind of kicked myself in the back on because I've had for a while. I should probably have it out by now, but a lot of material shortages. Like I've had a set of material I ordered, I don't even know, a while back, and as they get it in, it comes in pieces to me, so I was trying to work with what I get when it comes in and go from there.
Yeah, that's rough. So
you
got a deep freezer and stuff, or
everything goes.
Yeah.
Generally, when it comes to me, I get it. We're gonna do paperwork. We're gonna do everything. Just like any other taxidermist.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I'm measuring it, skinning it, putting it in, sending it off, doing whatever with the hide, getting it cleaned, ordering material, and whenever I get it back, it starts going together. And
You do the touch-up paints and all that too?
yeah, most stuff, when stuff dries, it loses color or loses texture.
Uh-huh.
So, like nose pads on deer, you got to re-put the nodules and all that, rebuild all the texture, and then painting. Some people think just color it black, it's good, but in a deer nose, I got about 5 colors that go into a deer nose. Just stuff I've learned, stuff I've picked up, reaching out to people. Like I said, just kind of self-taught, and it's hard, trying to do something and you try to reach out to people in your area. So I just, Facebook again, social media. I've followed some taxidermy groups, seen some guys who were doing awesome stuff, and tried to find guys close that I could mentor with, and no one really wanted to help, knowing that I was trying to do stuff on my own. And so I reached out to guys in other states who were doing really nice stuff, and hey man, you mind sending me a few quick videos or tips or ideas?
Sure.
Something, like everything's rebuilt on the inside of the face, clay work and
Wow.
all that. Have them send me pictures of that, and just kind of
Yeah.
trying to recreate most stuff. You don't really want to, with taxidermy, you don't want to recreate what somebody else did. You're trying to recreate a live animal, not
Yeah.
what somebody
Their
else did.
memory.
Right.
Yeah. That's cool. It's very cool. I've always been really interested, like I was telling you, about the whole taxidermy thing, and it takes a true artist to really bring something else back to life.
Oh, I can't draw
Yeah.
at all. It's weird.
You can do
My
it.
wife makes fun of me all the
These.
time. My kids are like, Dad, draw me a picture of something, thinking I can draw really well, but I can't draw at all.
We'll get a better view of these mounts that he brought to show off at the end of this whole thing. What's a good phone number that people can reach out to you?
Good phone number is 254-383-6382. I do have Facebook and Instagram as well. I don't have a website, so just Moorman Taxidermy on both, and you'll find me. So
We'll share those. We'll share those tags here real quick. Well, I appreciate you coming over and sitting in my garage for the last hour and a half.
oh yeah,
And talking about some of the stuff that you love to do, and I've learned all about you, and it's great. I can't wait to keep following you, and hopefully we get to hunt together or something in the future. Whenever this comes off Friday, so I'll be up in the stand finally.
well I'm ready for Friday. There's supposed to be a cold front
Oh yeah, I know.
coming Sunday, Saturday.
Yep.
So
Tuesday looks real nice here in Texas. I tell you that. I think the low for Tuesday into Wednesday is like 55 or 52 or something.
I don't care about Tuesday. I care about Friday night,
You
Saturday
do?
morning.
Yeah. Well, I hope I get to hunt that cold front that's coming through soon. And I wish you the best of luck as well.
Oh yeah.
Other than that, One Mission Outdoors, Moorman Taxidermy and Tracking Services. You can find him on Instagram and Facebook, and we'll share that info with you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in for this episode of the Mission Statement with Dillon Moorman. Thanks, guys.